Hello. In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at how to create our custom enemy. This is going to be a slightly different tutorial from creating a custom character because we don't have any specific tools for this, but it should be fairly simple as well. So the first thing that we have to do is to get our enemy visuals. I'm going to use this creature from the asset store created by Grigory. You can get it for free if you want to follow along. The reason why I have picked this enemy is because it contains a bunch of animations that we're gonna need for our enemy, because we're gonna replace this one with the new visuals. So all the animations, or almost all the animations that this one has, you will need. So yeah, the first thing that we're gonna do is to duplicate our monster prefab. So you can select here, duplicate the prefab, and I'm gonna move my new monster to the folder my game enemy. I'm gonna rename this to my monster, and I'll drop it here and get rid of all the other monsters that we have in the scene. Now we have a monster that it looks pretty much like the previous one. So we're gonna replace the visuals with our new model. So we just have to go here and drag and drop it. As you can see, our all monster is a bit taller, so we're just gonna scale it up. Obviously, this depends on how you want your enemy to look like. So in our case, I want to keep it big, so I'm just gonna make it I'm gonna make both heads match. And one thing that we have to do is to copy animator speed setter, which is the component that sets the speed on the animator depending on the movement speed, or better said, on the displacement of the character. So I'll paste it here. And as you can see, this model also has an animator, but it's missing a controller. So we're gonna go to our old mesh, select the controller and duplicate that. And we're gonna move it to our new folder and rename to my monster. And now we have to assign that animator controller on our animator. Cool. So now we have an animator controller. All these animations are now using the old rig, so they are not going to work. But it is very important that you don't rename these states, because we're simply replacing the models. We still want to use the same state machine, and this state machine uses some animator state handles, which are referenced by name, which are converted to hashes, but the name has too much. So if we didn't use the states and we created our enemy from scratch, we could skip this step and set up our animator if we wanted to. But since we're simply replacing, we just have to keep this as it is. I'm just gonna replace all the animations real quick with the new model animations. For example, idle, or go to horror creature, and I will pick the idle animation. For the hurt animation, I will replace it with a hit animation. Alerted, in our case, we don't want to, the original enemy had two states, like it would be crouching and it will stand up. We don't have that in this character, so I'm just gonna remove this animation, and so we don't have a different animation for when the enemy is alerted or not. It would simply be the same. For motion, this is a blend tree that goes from idle to walk. As you can see now, it doesn't do anything because it's using the old animation. So we just have to replace this with idle and walk. And now it should. Oh, I'm not using the right ones. So idle and walk. You can see that it goes from idle to walk depending on the speed parameter that is coming from the animator speed setter. Of course, if you wanted to, you could add another motion field here, and for example, for the run, run. And now, if the speed goes above 0.2, would start blending into running. So I'll carry on replacing the animations. For example, hurt stand up. This is again, this enemy doesn't have a stand up crouching states, so I'll simply use the same hit for attack. I'm gonna use attack 3 for the death. I'm gonna use not this one, death fall. I'm gonna use the same for the other two, because we don't have specific animations, for example, for when we blow the head off the enemy. So that should be it. I think I have replaced all of them. And we can go now and delete our old monster here. And the next thing that we have to do is replace the animator on the actors component. So you can see here that there is a missing animator. That is now our new mesh animator. And we are going to take a look at the attack animation, for example. Because we need to adjust our attack. So I'm going to activate the gizmos. And this is our new attack hitbox. So if I select here and I go into the attack animation, we can see that the character reaches much farther than the previous one. So I'm just gonna move this a lot forward. Let's check the animation again. Yeah, something like this might look okay. So I'm going to quickly explain what each of these things do. So damageable main is the main hitbox that the player can hit. So this is a bit smaller for what we have for our new visuals. Something like this might work. The head is the character weak point. You don't necessarily need to have this in your character. It's okay if you don't want to have weak points, or you could even have multiple weak points if you wanted to. Then the attack, this is what we just set up. The player enter trigger, this is the trigger, the text that makes the enemy detect the player, and the exit trigger is the trigger that makes it forget about the player. The side point is the point from where the enemy sees the player. So I'm going to move it a bit higher up. And these are the states. This is the blob. So shadow, we can make it a bit bigger because the enemy is bigger. And another thing that we have to fix is the nav mesh agent. Since this enemy is a bit bigger, we are going to increase the radius to match like the visuals and the height as well. That's pretty much it. We can go back to game and see how it looks. So I have placed the enemy in the right position in the level. I'm going to click play, move into the trigger, and we can see that the enemy comes towards the player. It doesn't look very good at the moment. The animation is not fast enough, and the speed is also not fast enough. So I'll adjust those things. So in order to adjust the enemy settings, I'm gonna first of all mark the player health infinite, so that way the player doesn't die and we can carry on tricking the enemy. And the first thing that I'm going to tweak is the speed. I'm going to set it to 2, and since this is a bigger enemy, I'm going to set the stopping distance to 2, and hopefully that will look a bit better. It's coming there for the player. I think that we can also tweak on our motion state. We can make the run faster, like 2. You can see that the walk is already twice as the regular speed. So we're going to set the run to the same, and you should probably check if you want to that the speeds of the other animations are set up correctly. Like the death animations have a some of them have a 1.5. I'm going to set the regular one to 1.5, so they are all at the same speed. Okay, so hits the player. The attack animation is a bit slow, so I'm going to set this to 1.5, and let's take another look at that. Yeah, that looks okay. We can see here that the box is showing up, which means that the trigger, well, the attack is getting activated. We already knew that because the player is getting damage, but we don't know if the timing is correct. So I'm gonna move away, and you can see that the hitbox gets enabled a bit too soon. So we can tweak that on the monster attack state, and there is an attack delay here, which we're gonna set to 0.75. I'll move it away, and yeah, that's. I'm gonna set it to 0.5. I think that will be a bit better. Yeah, that looks okay. Make sure that you make your changes also outside of play mode. I have set I stopped playing, and I have set now my speed to 2, stopping distance to 2, and attack to 0.5. And that's pretty much it. We can test it now. You can see that the character comes towards us, attack us, didn't hit us there. We can also make the rotation faster. In the alerted state, there is a phasing speed between attacks, which could be faster, and then during the attack, there is also a phasing speed. So that would make the enemy rotate faster. There. See, it might be even faster. So there, hit us. So now kill it. And that's all that is to it. Hopefully that was useful. I will leave the link at the documentation in the description in case something changes in the future. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.